I don't need to tell you this. We live in heavy times, and it's easy to get overwhelmed and weighed down by it all. But what if instead we used our influence to make the world a little lighter? As women, we have more influence than we think to create good in the world. Kathryn Davis, host of the new Magnify podcast, is here with 3 simple and powerful things we can do right now to use our influence to make a difference. Kathryn, I have heard, your reputation precedes you. I have heard such wonderful things about you. It's so great to meet you in person.
So nice to meet you.
And to have your voice and your passion and your light put toward this important topic. I know so many people, and I'm sure you do as well, so many women in particular who think, I don't have a brand, I don't have a business, I'm not an influencer, I don't have an Instagram account with tens of thousands of followers, so that title doesn't really apply to me, but you disagree.
I absolutely disagree. I think everybody can have an influence. And in fact, Sherry Dew has said having influence is not about elevating self, but about lifting others. And what a powerful statement that is, that we can really have an influence when we lift others. And I can think of so many women in my life who have lifted and have this ability to lift others. In fact, I have a sister. My sister Emily has this incredible ability to cheer others on. And I think that's sometimes often overlooked. In a world that seems to tear people down, she celebrates when anything good happens. For her, for me, for any of her friends. And I have another friend who just sees a need and is able to fill that need. In fact, she was driving by the high school a number of years ago and saw a young man that she knew in the neighborhood who was eating alone. And she thought, I can do something about that. So she held a lunch group at her house every week and invited teenagers and friends over so that at least that one day a week he wasn't eating alone. So I think we can have an influence in every day of our lives.
It's one of the many reasons I adore the title of your podcast, the word Magnify, because it speaks to us as women wherever we are, in whatever strength, capacity, skill, talent, ability we have, we can magnify our work. So I love that. And I also appreciate those examples you highlighted, because we sometimes think it does have to be, you know, a broad scope. Change the world if I'm gonna actually influence, but it's those small and simple things that really make the mark.
Yeah, it is. And it's our small and simple ideas and the way we can interact with other people. In fact, I truly believe part of our divine DNA, our divine inheritance, is the ability to create. And I'm not talking about being creative, because I am not a crafty or creative person.
You're gonna put down that paintbrush?
Yeah, I wish I could, but that is not my skill and that's not my talent. So I've always kind of thought I'm not creative, right? Until I've learned and understood that our ability to create, we can create more than just crafts, right? Like I believe we can create love, and love is the most powerful thing we can create. In fact, I truly believe that we can accomplish more through love than any other thing that we try, and any other emotion that we have, we can create more through love.
Well, as part of your podcast and the community you hope to build around that word Magnify, you've created a manifesto that speaks to that ability that women have to create love.
Yes. Yes, that manifesto is so powerful. In fact, it says we can accomplish through love is far greater than anything we could ever do through any other means. And that's what we're exploring this season on the podcast, is how we can be women that love well. And every week on the podcast, our guest will share a small and simple idea of something that we can do to love better.
Well, in addition to encouraging people to listen to the podcast, I'm going to encourage women to read that manifesto. I did last night, and even in my, bedhead pajama state, I was straightening up my shoulders and I was sitting up a little taller, thinking, no, we can love well. This is influence. This is my opportunity to magnify my work. I do want to ask you about some of the guests you've had so far and the lessons you've learned. If we were to pin you down on ways we can use our influence, you say one way we can do that is by extending grace. Who taught you about this?
Jody Moore, which I have been a fan of Jody Moore for many years. And so to be able to talk with her on the podcast, I learned so much about extending grace. And she actually taught about creating a compassionate story in our mind when we meet somebody who is struggling, or maybe somebody that is frustrating for us, or we have a hard day, is to create a compassionate story. And I have had to practice that a lot recently. In fact, just on Saturday night, I was driving home from the football game and somebody cut me off, and I had to slam on my brakes, and I almost hit them. And
Your cheeks match the color of their bumper, right?
I was a little upset, and I immediately thought of a compassionate story of my son was at homecoming that night, and I had heard there had been an accident on the freeway, and I thought to myself, maybe they just heard that their child got in a car accident at homecoming, and so they're speeding home to get them, and it totally changed my feelings and my thoughts, and I wasn't upset and I wasn't aggravated. And I think we can do that in so many instances in our life when we just extend grace and create a compassionate story.
I love that challenge. Tell yourself a story that builds compassion around your frustration or your negative emotion.
Right.
Talk to me about this idea of looking outward. You believe that's another way we can use our influence for good.
Yeah, this came from an interview with Michelle Craig. Which I loved. And she talked about how she was inspired to put away her phone, especially standing in lines. And I think that's our first reaction. We're standing in a line, we have a couple minutes.
Oh, I've got 2 minutes. I can scroll. Think how many Instagram posts I can catch up on in 2 minutes.
Right, or send a text or whatever. And so she just really felt like she needed to put away her phone. So she was standing in a line at Target and saw a gentleman in front of her with some cat food. And she just thought to herself, how can I acknowledge him? And so she just said, it looks like you have a cat. And
nice humble opening line. I love it.
And they talked about this cat, and then he just said, I don't know if you know or if anybody knows, but today's my birthday. And she was able to wish him a happy birthday. And she said, I don't know if anybody else was able to wish him a happy birthday, but how grateful she was that she had put away her phone.
Yes.
And I just think sometimes that was her challenge for us that week, was to put away our phones.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge the person standing across from us or sitting across from us.
That became her opportunity to love well or to influence a little deeper.
Yes.
In our 1 minute left together, talk to me about this idea of learning someone's story. We talked about creating a compassionate story, which is a good internal exercise, but actually making that bid or that invitation opens up a whole new level of connection.
It does. And that starts with the question. Right? Taylor Ricks teaches us that we can ask a question to learn somebody's story. And I just have seen that be so powerful in my life. Like, I have been a teacher, and I had a student once who was not happy to be there and somewhat disrespectful. And one day he came into class and he looked so tired, and I just said to him, hey, are you okay? Are you tired? Why don't you go into my office? I have a blanket, I have a pillow, go in there and take a nap. And he came back towards the end of class, and then he talked to me after, and he just said something like, that was the nicest blanket I have ever had. I've been in foster care, and I've never had my own blanket. And learning that story of him, I never looked at his behavior the same. It never bothered me, or I never felt it was disrespectful. If we can learn someone's story, really learn and ask a question, I think how we interact with them will be different. And we can love them because of their story and because of their differences, not in spite of them.
Your words are so on point. Your message is so important, how we can love well, how we can magnify the work we're doing, and in turn influence the world for good. Kathryn, thank you so much. Where can we get more inspiration like this?
Oh, I'd love it. We have a weekly podcast. It's at Magnify. You can get it wherever you get your shows, or magnifythegood.com.
Building a great community online as well. So we are cheering you on. Please come back and continue to share these lessons with us.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me, Brooke.
Thank you.
So fun.